All right, Mark, go for it.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the New York State School Counseling Association, also known as NYSSCA. I am Mark Mason. I am your president. We're so honored to have you here today for this very special presentation for school counselors. This is for high school level school counselors. You know, it's taken us some emails back and forth in order for us to get this very special presenters that we have coming to you next. This was also done today from a grant from the Gates Foundation. Today we have joining you Meredith Lombardi and Bree Busby. Meredith has served with the Meredith has served with the Common App Association as the Associate Director of Outreach and Education for the past 6 years. As a part of that, she is a member of the Access and Equity team. Meredith engages with school counselors, students, and families to ensure Common App resources and relevant supports are there for college access. Meredith previously worked as a high school counselor in Washington, D.C. and in Georgia. She has a bachelor's degree from Emory University and her master's in school counseling from the University of Maryland at College Park. You're in for a great treat. I've worked with Meredith. We've been back and forth on some conversations. I will say to everybody in New York, way to go, especially to all high school counselors that are out there, because in 2020, New York State was one of the leading states that had the most applications around the country. We had 849,000 applications go through the Common App, which is amazing to us. And I know Meredith's going to talk a little bit more about that. So now I'm going to turn it over to Meredith and Bree.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for hosting, Bob. And hi, everyone. It's nice to be with you. Of course, I hope one day that I get an invitation to come join you in person, maybe at your future NYSSCA conference. And as Mark mentioned, my colleague Bree is joining us from Texas. Bree is new to the student and family engagement team here at Common App. So, and comes from a community-based organization most recently. Yep. So I know we're virtual. I know that you all probably, like me, have a to-do list and you're like multitasking, which I totally get. But I do want to make this as informal as possible. So
just asking.
If
okay. Okay. It started 3:45, so I just want to, I might just.
All good. So if you do have questions while I'm sharing any content, is there a raise your hand? I think under reactions, you can do the raise your hand if you want to ask a question at that time, or you can put it in chat. I have built-in time for us to go through Q&A at the end. So it could definitely be that as I'm presenting, you want to wait until the end. However you want to do it, I'm open. As Mark mentioned, yes, I'm a former school counselor. I worked with DC Public Schools prior to joining Common App, and also with Fulton County Schools right outside of Atlanta. So I'm really excited to be with you all. And I'm from New Jersey, so I feel like your neighbor, you know, New Jersey, New York. Yes. All right. What do I need to do? I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully it's going to work. Okay. There we go. Look at that. And all right, can you guys see that okay? All right, I see head nods, excellent. Like Mark mentioned, we have been talking about doing this for quite some time. I do anticipate that some of you are experts at the Common App, and some of you may be newer to the Common App, but I think that the content that I will share will be relevant to all of you, regardless of where you are in your journey. At one point, we were going to do this presentation before or even during school counseling week. And I know that it's passed, but I still thought we're in the month of February. We get like, today's the 28th. And so I still wanted to make sure and to say, happy National School Counseling Week. I am going to share these slides with Mark, who will then share these with you all. There's a nice video that Mrs. Obama shared to celebrate school counselors, and I wanted to make sure that you also receive that. So quick little, agenda setting. I'll give you some background on where things currently stand with Common App. Just do some highlighting of the student and counselor experience, point out where you can access resources, and then get to your questions. This may be a graphic that you have seen before. Be curious to know if others have seen this, but it basically shows you that Common App has been around for quite a long time, over 40 years now, which in some states like New York, you're more familiar with it than in some other states where some of their state system institutions have joined on more recently. We are a nonprofit, have always been. We are a membership organization, and we have a mission of access, equity, and integrity in the admission process. So 1975, we had these 15 pioneering institutions come together for the Common App experiment. And now it's grown to nearly 1,000 member institutions. Officially, 979 this year. We do have members in all 50 states, plus DC and Puerto Rico. And your students, you probably have seen over the last several years, are also able to apply to institutions outside of the United States. So currently, there are 63 members in 19 countries outside of the US. The image that you see here is the Common App map, which you may or may not have gotten this year. Maybe you can put some reactions like, yes, I got it, or sad, didn't get it. When COVID hit, we put a pause on mailing maps out to high schools, but then we put out a link that said you can go and order your own map for free to be delivered to you. So if for some reason you did not get one this year, or maybe you got one at your school, but you have a counseling, group and you would like to have more than one map at your school, you can order one for free at commonapp.org/map. So every year we have new institutions that join Common App. This year was no exception. We had, I think, officially over 70 institutions that joined for 21-22. This one says 65. Those institutions were in 23 different states. Most notably for us this year was that the system in Illinois joined the Common App membership. So similar to how the SUNYs are on Common App, this was the first time that an entire system coordinated by the governor in Illinois joined the Common App membership. We always post our new members in the springtime, so you can anticipate in April, we'll put out an updated new member list for the 22-23 application cycle. In terms of what you see in New York, there are, of the 979 members, 101 of them are institutions that are in New York State. 26 of those are public institutions. And then we also have, our first year application as well as our transfer application. So 86 of those institutions also accept the Common App for transfer. Majority of what I'm sharing with you all today is about the first year application, but certainly if you do have any questions about transfer, I am happy to answer those. And if anytime you want to see, well, which schools, are members of Common App, if you go to commonapp.org/explore, that's when you can actually get to the full list of member institutions. This is what Mark shared with you earlier in terms of New York leading the way, and this is by applicants. So I will show you number of applications submitted as well, but this is talking about just unique students who have submitted at least one application through the Common App. And so usually like New York and California are kind of vying for that first place. But right now, this is this current year cycle. Students in New York are leading in terms of submitting at least one application through Common App. So we have surpassed 1 million individual students this year, 1.2 million, and the students have submitted so far 7.3 million applications in total. I'm going to be sharing with you some additional data, but I thought that it was worth noting that through grant funding, we were able to build out a data warehouse and to bring on an entire data analytics and research team at Common App, which is something that we have not had before. So we now have 3 data scientists at Common App who are able to look at, through an equity lens, Common App data. If you think about over 1 million students submitting applications each year, there is a rich amount of data that can be mined and researched and released to share with the public, and really for the greater good. And so a lot of the work of this team has been to look at inequities and to find places in the application process that need to be spotlighted so that our members can actually possibly change their practices. So things that we have been able to look at are like school discipline practices, to look at criminal history, to look at, during COVID, the first year, to look at the number of applications submitted by first generation students, low income students. And so even though we had this data at Common App, we didn't have the capabilities to disaggregate the data and look at it in a way to really help inform practice. And now we do have that team. And so wanted you to be aware that at this reports and insights link, which again, you'll get these slides, you can actually look at, the team is publishing application update reports. They did a report on pandemic patterns, and they published for the first time the state reports. So those reports did not exist in the past until this past year, where they published them in the fall. And that's some of the data that I'm going to share with you now. So this is from the 2020-2021 application cycle. Last year, there were 803,000 applications submitted by students in New York. Those students were a total of 109,000 students. Where you see the plus, that's the year over year growth. So it's remained fairly flat in New York in terms of the number of students submitting applications each year. The 908 number, that's the number of different institutions that students in New York were applying to. That's pretty remarkable when you look at last year, there were only 919 Common App member institutions. So really, students in New York were applying everywhere. And you also remember that we have all those international institutions as well. When I present with some other states, that number sometimes is in the 400s or 500s. So it really does show that students in New York, they have the greater diversity in terms of where they're looking to attend school. The in-state versus out-of-state is just when they're submitting those applications, are those applications staying in New York or are they going outside of New York? And so 45% are going out of state, 55% in-state. If you want to get this full report, it's at commonapp.org/state reports. Also from that report, you can see the top receiving institutions last year, which you'll see here again on the left, and you will get these in the report, and then top applying counties as well. Again, there's some more information, some more details, demographic information when you go to the state reports. When it comes to the student experience, most of the time students are learning about Common App through you as their counselor. And so it's a matter of when you introduce to them Common App, whether that's in their senior year or hopefully earlier than their senior year, since they do not have to wait to create their Common App account. Journey starts at commonapp.org, where students can either create their account or click apply now. For you, and I hope that you all, if there's like one takeaway, it's that all counselors are invited to have a student practice account. If you don't have one, I'll speak from experience. When I was a counselor, I did not have one. It's just something I didn't even know existed, but it has been there and it's been simplified so that you can see that you're invited into this process. So when you go to commonapp.org and you click on create an account, there's a part there that says education professional. And if you click on that, it just says, hey, you're about to create a practice account. You can have your own student application account. You're just not seen as a true prospective student for the colleges that you might put on your list. And you can't actually submit an application. So totally encourage you, if you don't currently have that student practice account, that you do go out and create one. It will simplify things for you when students ask you questions like, where is the fee waiver? Or what are the essay prompts? Or do you understand what this college is asking when they ask whatever question they're asking? You can do it directly right from within your own account. Also, if you're doing presentations and you want to get screenshots, you can get them from within your own practice account. This past year, we also launched a mobile app. So again, if you've been doing this for a few years, you may recall that we had something called On Track, which was a companion tool to the Common App application platform. So the Common App in general has been a web-based application platform. And then we had this tool that students could do some things like look at deadlines or invite recommenders or add colleges, but it wasn't the full application platform. We now officially have where students can go to the Apple Store or Google Play and they can download for free Common App and they can actually do their Common App. Our tech team can look and see how students are applying. So even before we had the app, we already knew that there was a large number of students that were completing their Common App using their mobile devices. And we have made strides to make the application mobile friendly and to be accessible regardless of whether a student's going from a desktop to a laptop to a mobile device. But now, on top of that, the mobile app is also there just to help give them that additional support and alternative way to complete their application. You probably already know this, but I get asked by students a lot, how much does it cost to submit an application? Is it free to use the Common App? How do fee waivers work? So I just wanted to make sure that you all have the toolkit that you need to talk to your students. So Common App is free. Each individual college determines if they're going to charge an application fee and what that application fee may be. This year, over 400 colleges on the Common App do not charge an application fee. And then for those that do, your students have the fee waiver question in the application where all students are asked, would an application fee be a barrier for you? And do you meet any of these eligibility criteria? And so getting a waiver for the SAT or ACT, participating in the free and reduced lunch program, being homeless, participating in a federal, state, or local program like Gear Up or TRIO, Upward Bound, those things qualify students for fee waivers. This past year, because of fee waivers, students saved over $100 million that was not paid in application fees. Now, that is money that our colleges, right, are granting for students. So again, this barrier is not there. I will give you a little teaser that as part of our evolving the application work, we are trying to simplify even more the fee waiver process so that students who may not know that they qualify will now find it easier to see themselves and be able to ask for that waiver. Another aspect of a Common App, which hopefully you are aware of, is that we have the feature called account rollover. So August 1st is that launch day every year when the new application opens up. For your students, they don't have to wait until then. So thinking about especially your juniors, if they create an account now, their username and password can roll over from year to year. Any answers that they put on the Common App tab in those 7 sections, profile, family, education, testing, activities, writing, and courses and grades, all of their answers roll over from year to year. What doesn't roll over is our answers to college-specific questions. So we give our member institutions over the summer so that they can finalize their questions. So students don't want to start writing or answering those questions until after August 1st. They also shouldn't be inviting recommenders or doing the FERPA release until after August 1st. All right, so this is what it looks like inside the application. Again, hopefully you are familiar with this, or you will become very familiar when you have your practice account. Just a reminder that we have 24/7 support at Common App. So it does not matter what time a student's working on their account or what time zone they're in, they can get to support directly from within their application. They also, we have inline FAQs that are tied to whatever section they're in while they're completing their application. The slide is very messy and busy, but this is the My Colleges tab. So this is where the students are answering questions specific to the colleges they're applying to, accordion style, so they can pop into the different schools. They are doing their FERPA release authorization here, answering college-specific questions, inviting and assigning their recommenders, that's you, as well as their teachers, and if they have any other recommenders, submitting their application to individual schools, and then submitting a separate writing supplement if there's a separate writing supplement. The teal box at the bottom is just the call out that you probably are aware that Common App has expanded our integration partners. So you may be at a school that uses Naviance or Maya Learning or CAlpha or School Links or one of our other partners. In those situations, the Common App, based on the student's SEEB code, the Common App blocks the student from inviting their counselor and teachers. So a message pops up to the student that says, your school is using Naviance, eDocs. You do not invite your counselor here. You will go to your counselor, go to Naviance, and you'll do the process there. Just to note with that there is still an other recommender type in the Common App. And so if the student does have someone that's an other recommender, like a coach or an employer or someone from outside the school, even if you're using an integration partner, they can still invite that other recommender. The fourth recommender type is the advisor role. And so that role was created really to support community-based organizations that didn't have visibility to know where their students were applying. But it's really there for the student to choose who they want to help them with the process. So we also know that students invite family members to use the advisor role. We know that students invite their counselor who may be at one of the integration partners. So if you, again, are using Naviance or one of these other platforms, but you still want to see a PDF preview of your student's application, or you want to be able to track their progress in the application, you can be invited with your same email address using the advisor role. Happy to answer any questions about the advisor role, because I know that has always, I guess, just confuse people sometimes. In terms of the application, I wanted to just make sure that you all are familiar with our Evolving the Application work. This was a project that we kicked off now 2 years ago, and it was really to identify questions in the application process that would create barriers for students to the extent where they may not submit their application. And so again, with that grant funding, we were able to look at our data, find some of those inequities, and then coupled with external research and focus groups and member interviews and surveys, we made several changes this past cycle. And so that's where you would have seen changes to sex and gender questions, to family questions, to removing military discharge, removing school discipline, removing religious affiliation, and then updates in the citizenship section to make it more inclusive for undocumented and DACA eligible students. We have a whole website on the commonapp.org site for evolving the app. So if you wanted to get any kind of data or background on how any of these decisions were made, if you go out there, there are presentations, there's slides, lots of rich content. And if you'll see in that blue box, this is something that's happening on an annual basis. So we have in this past year, we've also been looking at additional questions. And so that's where I was mentioning fee waiver. That was one of the areas that we looked at this year to, again, just remove some of the barriers and confusion for students. So we'll be making some additional announcements about evolving the app in the next few weeks. Also, I'll just put a plug. Anytime if you are interested in you or your colleagues or students participating in conversations about how we can evolve the application to make it more inclusive, I'm sharing my contact information at the end. I'd be happy to continue the conversation with you, have you get involved in some of those conversations. For the essay that's part of Common App, just wanted to note, hopefully you've seen it in the counselor newsletter that has gone out, that we are not making any changes to the essay prompts. So again, especially if you're working with juniors, you can let them know the prompts that exist there this year are the same prompts. This year we did add a new prompt. So again, in August 21, we added the prompt on gratitude. And that's that little pink sliver there, that 3%. That's letting you know the percentage of students this year who have selected that new prompt. We did see this year a little uptick in the students selecting topic of your choice. It's usually been around 24%, 25%. So just an interesting thing for us to kind of track. Also on here, just a note, again, if you're not familiar, Common App is integrated with Google Drive. So if you are a Google Drive school, or you know that your students are using Gmail and have Google Drive, they can create their own folders in Google Drive, get organized there. And then if they have their essays or writing supplements in their folders and files on Google Drive, anytime they see the icon in their Common App account, they can always pull content in from those documents. Community disruption question, which includes COVID-19, is not going away. That will remain there for next year because we know that it has a long-lasting impact. It is optional. It is not an essay. It's there so that students have the space, if they need it, to talk about anything that may have impacted them due to COVID-19 or natural disasters. This does include thinking about wildfires, hurricanes, tornadoes, any other things that have also impacted students where they cannot have access to their regular schooling. But it's just, again, optional space. We've seen like 1 in 3 students use the space. So your students will probably ask you about it, but it's really, again, just to remind them that if they want the space, it is there for them, so that if they don't want to have to write about it in their essay, they can put that here in that space. Also for you all, and again, would love to hear feedback, whether you put it in the chat or you want to talk about it at the end. You also have space in the recommender forms to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on your school community. All right, so kind of jumping over to where you all are interacting with the system. Again, I completely recognize that not all of you are in the actual recommender system. You may be using one of the integration partners. For those of you who are using our system, this is what the refreshed system has looked like now for the past few years. We continue to make updates on this. And again, if you are interested in providing feedback, you have like a wish list of, I wish Common App would do this, or if only it worked this way, please take my contact information. Yes, Mark.
Sorry, I do have a question already. So you're saying that we could use Common App without a recommended provider?
Say that again.
So we could use Common App without a Naviance or could.
We have, yes, Common App has a recommendation system.
Ooh. Thank
This
you.
this is what it looks like. Okay, I don't know if that was like a serious question or not, but yes. Yeah, at one point, it was around 50% of, actually the majority of seed codes. So if you think about every high school in the world, majority of seed codes are in the US, but let's just take all seed codes. Majority of them use the Common App recommender system. When you talk about just the volume of students, when the only integration partner was Navient, it was around 50% were using the Common App recommender system and 50% were using Navient. Now that we have integrations with all these other partners, it's spread out, so it's different. But certainly, yeah, it's free to use, seamlessly works with the application platform. It's very cool. Our UX team is amazing, and they have really built this thing out to be user-friendly and simplistic. And they did a lot of user testing to figure out what counselors needed to make this just a really great platform. And it has filters, so if you're like, which of my students are using or need courses and grades, you can just do the filter. Or which of my students are applying to Binghamton? You can just do the filter. Which of my students need midterm reports? Filters in there to get all of that for you. Yes, new hand. Go, Mark.
Oh, so there's a question in the chat that I just want to go over really quick because I know you said you popped those up. So the question says, we have students who have not expressed their the pronouns to their family. So they would like to have their preferred name on the application. How is that sent home? So the question is wondering how that's sent home.
As in, how do the colleges communicate with the student?
In terms of, yes, I believe.
Yeah, so that, because you're right, I'm not currently monitoring the chat. There is I believe, a learn more, right, where we have the pronouns for students about how they may get used, because we don't personally have control over whether or not a member institution will choose to use those pronouns or not, or how that may get put into communications that get sent home. So that is a part where it's not necessarily just between the student, Common App, and the member institution, because it can extend beyond in terms of communications. Again, piece of feedback, there's still always room to grow in this area. And I know that students have, there's the pronoun part, there's also the free text box in terms of gender identity. So, the question back to you all, it would be, how can we make it so that students feel that this is a safe environment for them to share their true selves without the fear of potentially sharing that information? And that was feedback when we did open up or make some changes in the gender identity question, where students would put in there, my preferred pronouns are they, them, but please don't tell my parents. And so students actually sharing that information. Yeah. Okay. But I will say we continue to look at it because we want to be inclusive without going to a point where students feel that they're unclear about where that information is then being shared and used and how it's being used. In the recommender system here, so again, if you're in the system, you can get to the requirements grid that gives you all the member institutions, all of their deadlines, fees, whether or not they require counselor letter recommendation or teacher letter recommendations, if they use courses and grades, midterm reports, final report, all of that is in that big requirements grid. You can track your students' progress. You can see in this image, you can actually see if the student has completed all required questions by the 7 different sections of the Common App. You can look at not only what colleges are on their list, but also, again, have they done their college-specific questions? Have they done their writing supplements? You can see an in-progress PDF of their application. That is based on students turning on or off application preview. So you will find some students have turned that on and some students have not. That is also one of the filters. So if you're like, let me find the students who haven't turned it on, for example, and then you can have conversations with them if that's a feature that you want to use. And again, that in progress PDF is for not only their main Common App, but also any of the responses that they have written for college specific essays or short answers as well. And then you can download and export details to Excel. In terms of forms, you'll know, I know that you all know, I remember processing Common App applications and just all the different forms. And I was a Naviance user myself, and then did paper Common App before that. But one thing just to note here, because it doesn't always trickle down, is that not all colleges require a counselor letter of recommendation. In fact, only 35% require it. Now, if you have just one school requiring it and you're writing it, again, Common App is one and done. So you write the letter one time and it gets distributed to any of the schools that the student applies to via Common App. Teacher evaluations, again, not all schools require them. 30% of member institutions require them. Just anything that we can do to help like dispel myths, I think, because students just assume that they need X number of teacher letters of recommendation. And again, from what we have from Common App, majority do not require a letter. The ones that do, most often they require one letter of recommendation, not two, although some do. So it's just really important that students are looking at what they need for each school that they're applying to. Also, you'll note here, mid-year report, not all schools require the mid-year report. We added the optional report 2 this year because we heard feedback from counselors that after submitting the first optional report, they needed to, another way to submit additional information that wasn't part of the initial school report, mid-year report, and before the final report. So there is that second optional report available to you. We have a recommender guide out here if you have questions. The other piece I'll just put a plug in now is if you are a part of a counseling team, which I imagine many of you are, if you're going to fill out the school profile information, just strongly I encourage you all to get together as a team and come up with the same answers for the school profile questions. Because I can tell you what we see, not that I happen to be looking at it, which I was recently for another project, the answers were all over the place for the same school. And if you think about colleges trying to use that information to understand your school context, it can be very confusing if one counselor at the school says, you have 50% free and reduced lunch, and another counselor says you have 2% free and reduced lunch. So it just come together at the beginning of the year as a department to work on your school profile questions. Mention the optional report. These are just some of the updates that we made. We'll have our What's New webinars. We usually do them in May or June. So we'll do that again. It'll be me. So come join me where I will give you updates. Again, we have these expanded integration partners. We will have additional ones joining coming again, April, May timeframe. And then resources. I know we've got we're gonna have at least 15 minutes of Q&A. So I haven't seen any of the questions, but I see that there are questions and you're gonna help me with this, Mark. Check out the website. We've built out so many resources on the website. If you just want to know, is a school a member of Common App? You can come out to explore colleges. I know I don't have I don't know if this will work, but right in the middle, you see there's a little thing. Ooh, you see a thing that says print search results. So if you create a list of schools, maybe using search filters or no search filters, if you click on print search results, that'll give you whatever list that is. So at a minimum, if you just wanted, give me all the schools that are on Common App. If you print that, it will give it to you in a print-friendly listing. But also you can use this to find schools that have no application fee or the schools that are test optional, which majority of Common App member institutions are test optional. anything, you can use this Explore Colleges. And then you can also look at map views, which is super helpful for students when they have no concept and they say to you, I know I want to go study in California. And you're like, but California is like a very large state. Do you have any idea where you're looking at? So they can look at it in a map view. Also, the students can go out here and read about individual institutions. There are tags, so that if they click on a tag, it'll then give them other schools that are similar in that tag. They can do virtual tours on the Common App website, access image galleries. They can learn about academic programs. And this is all populated by the individual member institutions. So they are the ones that are deciding what images should be out here and all of the information that they're sharing. We have checklists for students out on the website, guides to the application and recommender system, information for parents. We have Common App Ready, which are those like handouts if you need them for students. So they're written, meant to be given to students. They're all available in English as well as Spanish. There's an application dictionary out there to just talk about all of the terminology that we use in this process that is not familiar to students. Reach Higher is part of Common App. They've been with us since 2019. This was the initiative started by former First Lady Michelle Obama to really encourage students, particularly from underrepresented and low-income backgrounds, to reach for post-secondary opportunities. It has been really amazing just to come together as our two teams and to lift up student voices, to get resources out to students and counselors. Together, Reach Higher, Common App, we are hosting a webinar series. So if you're not familiar with this kicks off tomorrow, where we have a professor from Butler University's graduate program in school counseling, Dr. Brandy Oliver. She's going to be doing a presentation on pandemic rest and how to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our students. So really looking forward to that. We've got a panel for test optional. We're doing a session with counselors and teachers to talk about collaboration in this process. And then our final one is going to be with former winners of the Excellence in College Counseling Award, as well as some of their students, just talking about their recent process. We are working with NYSSCA so that counselors get CEUs for attending these webinars. So definitely, if you can, come join us. And then, we're going to be shifting gears into College Signing Day. So if you do anything and you want to make sure that we know about it, we're going to be sharing lots of information over the coming months to get you an updated toolkit and just make sure that you're connected on social. 24/7 support, like I mentioned. And then just like some takeaways. Our newsletter went out today. If you didn't get it, you can sign up at commonapp.org/advisors, get your practice account, use application preview in our rec system, which exists, take advantage of our free resources, and reach out anytime you need help. Those are our social handles, how to contact us. Also, you'll notice here an ideas portal. It goes right to our product team. I'm sure you guys are like, this girl just shared so much information. But if you have suggestions to improve this process, please use the ideas portal. And there's my contact information. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can get to questions. I'm ready. Mark, do you want to choose them or how do you want to do this? Thank you all. I hope this is helpful.
So if people want to raise their hand and just ask a question, we can go that way. If anyone has any questions, starting that way at first.
You're also shy.
Okay, first, Bree, thank you so much for putting links into the chat. Super helpful. Christian, your question about transfer. Is there a way to do that? Okay, so yes. So this is so interesting. In the transfer application, there is a recommender type called a high school official. So the individual colleges, they can choose if they want to accept high school transcripts electronically by using the high school official recommender type. So that's one way. And I can, just like there's the first year requirements grid, there's also there's a transfer requirements grid. And the transfer requirements grid tells you whether or not the school accepts the high school official in order to be able to send the electronic transcripts. So you'd be logging into the transfer it's called letters by liaison, but basically the transfer recommender system versus the first year recommender system. But there is that way to send electronic transcripts. And then alternatively, some of the colleges just say that they'll accept it unofficially. And so the student can actually upload it as an unofficial high school transcript, but it's on a college by college basis. So the first thing I would say is take a look at the transfer requirements grid to see if they'll accept it through the high school official recommender type.
But I can't do that through the actual, the one I used for my high school seniors. I mean, I'd have to.
So I will say, well, and you're speaking specifically about transfer versus about.
Yeah, it's a student who graduated last year. She had 15 different schools that she had applied to, and I was hoping I could just upload it once and they could download it for whoever needed it. But so she actually let me log into her account, and I couldn't find where she could add me into that. So from the transfer application.
Got it. Because I was going to say, so she's transfer versus like a student who took a gap
Right.
year.
Yeah, she was with us last year, but she picked up 30 high school credits, so she finished in 1 year, and they still needed high school transcripts for some of them. But
Gotcha. Yeah, I hear you, and I agree. It could be improved. But let me at least get you again, you're probably past where you need to be at this point. You just probably had to mail them off. But I'll get you the requirements grid. Yeah. Karen, I think we got to your question about preferred name and pronouns. Yep. I'm just reading the comments, Karen. Yeah.
Hi, Meredith. My name's Angela. When you have a chance, I actually have a question.
I'm ready. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So circling back, so we're a Navient school. And it is always a challenge when a student wants to include a community member or a coach. So, but if we're already integrated with Navient, you're saying with Common App, they could still do that. Interesting. Okay.
Yes. I didn't know that either when I used Naviance. I was just creating new recommender accounts for people.
Right. Which I'm trying to avoid,
Yeah. So basically if you use one of the integrations like Naviance, the Common App blocks the student from inviting counselor and teacher, but the student still can invite an other recommender as well as an advisor.
Great. That's huge.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Are there other questions? I do have a couple that did come up in advance. All right, so let's throw one at you. A question came up about writing each student a letter of recommendation. They're wondering if there are other options on writing one recommendation for each student, or if there's another way of doing that that's a little bit easier.
So one, I'll say, your students best. I'll also say feedback has been certainly during these past 2 years that it has been increasingly challenging for counselors to know their students and teachers in the same way that they may have in the past, especially if you were virtual for a good bit of time with the students. What we have done in our recommender system, which again will then translate into the integration partners, is we have provided space where it says, like, if you are unable to write a letter for this student, you can indicate that. And then there's a box where you can just say whatever you need to say. Anytime I've co-presented with colleges, they've always said, this does not penalize a student in any way. That is your ability to just say, I don't know the student well enough to write this, or my caseload has prevented me, from being able to write a letter of recommendation. We also, and again, I don't know what language translates out to integration partners. We also say that if you feel that you can't write a letter, let's say the student has just transferred to your school, or they have a better relationship maybe with an administrator or someone else, we say, you have the authority to upload a letter written by someone else. So the schools trust as you having the official account that you are then either again uploading your own letter, or if you would prefer to use someone else's letter. So there are options for you if you find yourself in that situation where you can't write for each individual student. Hopefully you also have where perhaps you are using your brag sheets, right, or gathering information from students to help them use questionnaires. We also have copies of some sample brag sheets on our website if you are looking for some sample ones, but just a way for you to get some of the information you need so that you can write those letters. Again, I feel you, because I remember that last year it was like 130 letters, and it was a lot on top of just trying to meet with students and make sure they're okay.
Can you share where those brag sheets are, or sample brag sheets for everyone?
Yep. I believe they're in the recommender guide. So let me go out there, just double check.
While you're looking for that, I'll have another question for you here.
Right.
So when schools submit their materials, so when students submit their materials, is it sent to the colleges at the time the student submits their application, or does it go with something separately?
Oh, Jesse, this is your question. It's a great question. So the way that it works with Common App is we hold forms until the student submits their application. So you can send yours in at any time, and we'll hold it until the student applies. Now, if the student applies first, we'll send their application. Like we always send the application, but the counselor forms or teacher forms, those forms follow the application. So the application has to be delivered first before the other forms. That also has caused, and again, I don't know if you're at Naviance or using another system, but it's definitely caused confusion when a student decides to change the platform that they're using. So maybe, for example, they start on Common App, you submit through Common App, and then the student gets a code to apply through the institutional app. Maybe they get like a apply today and it's free. Your recommender forms would never get delivered to the college if the student doesn't hit submit through Common App. And so sometimes, that's where some schools have things in place where they ask the student, like, how are you planning to apply? If you change how you're planning to apply, you need to inform us so that your forms get delivered to the institution. So yes, we hold on to them until the application is submitted. It's a great question.
Do you want to show us the actual some of the senior certs or senior information in which you have there that you were going to share with us in terms of some of the brag sheets?
I can't find it right now.
Okay, it's okay. We'll get it when we send out the information, the material. That's
I will
okay.
get them. I will find them, and I will. You can share them out when you share out the slides.
One last question that's here is, are there community colleges or master's program applications available on the Common App?
Yes. Good question. No is the current answer, although we do have one 2-year institution that is a member of Common App. There is nothing that prevents a community college from being a member of Common App. In our strategic plan, we hope that community colleges will join Common App because we do believe in pathways, and we know that many students may start with a 4-year institution in mind, and then they end up filling out a 2-year application, and they have to go and do that separately. And so we have invested in a position at Common App to help us with our transfer and community college engagement. So at this time, there's only one 2-year institution on Common App, but our membership criteria does not prevent community colleges, and our goal is to expand to have community colleges as part of the membership. As terms of the masters, Common App currently only serves for undergraduate. We do partner with Liaison, that's who provides our transfer application platform, and Liaison does have some graduate school CAS systems, which are basically common application systems. So they have a system called GradCAS and Nursing CAS and other kinds of platforms that you or your students may hear of when it gets to graduate school. But currently, Common App, our platforms are for undergraduate.
Thank you. That's all of our questions. I'll turn it over to Dr. Bob.
So on behalf of our Professional Development Committee, Dr. Gail Reed Burnett, Cynthia Wally, Kathy Corbett, myself, Laura Mesa, and Cheryl Hall, we'd like to thank Meredith and Bree for your presentation today. Upcoming presentations are Western New York School Counselor Consortium just went out today, is having a webinar next Wednesday. On the 10th, we're doing one on how to incorporate social media and CASEL competencies. Our next Champ Camp Express is March 28th. Stay tuned for emails and save the date for our annual conference, which is November 17th through 19th at the Hilton Albany. Just got this, Mark. Within the next 24 hours, I'll be getting you links to the recording for this meeting, links to the PowerPoint, links to the chat, because there's a bunch of links in the chat, and any other information that we send along. If you attended today, you'll get a certificate of attendance. That'll be in the next 24 hours. So any other questions before we close up? Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it.